All right. Hello, everybody. I know people are joining the call and getting settled in. We'll take another moment or two just to give people some time to join and figure out their cameras and microphones. We are going to be here for the next hour, and the purpose of this is really to just be able to connect with you and answer your questions about exercising for bone density and exercising with osteoporosis. And my name is Yenny. I am the founder and CEO here at Kari Prehab. We really love hosting these sessions because so often a question is just much more easily and effectively answered in kind of like a live exchange rather than via email. And usually questions also generate follow-up questions, which can a lot more effectively be dealt with in this kind of in this setting. So the intention is this for this to be a very informal and loose and friendly environment. So you are welcome to put questions into the chat at any time. You're also welcome to unmute yourself and ask questions. We have like a ready-made list of questions for every single one of these because we get so many comments and questions via our social media and our newsletter as well. So we'll be answering those as we make our way through this. And before we get started, I also wanted to introduce our coaching team here who are I'm so excited that they're able to make these sessions because they have so much depth of expertise on the topic of exercising for bone density. And they all have slightly different training backgrounds as well, which means they all have slightly different areas of specialty and expertise that they bring to the table. So you get to hear it from multiple different, highly complementary angles. So maybe we can start with just a round of introductions. Michaela, since you're the program director, maybe you would like to go first.
Right. Hi, everybody. My name is Michaela. As Yenny mentioned, I'm the program director. I'm also the co-creator of the program. So I get to see kind of like the big picture of the program and support the coaches and the cohort as they go through each round. My background started in yoga. I'm a yoga medicine therapeutic specialist at the 500-hour level. And then I began strength training and just really fell in love with it. Became a NASM certified personal trainer, and I started to work with women with osteoporosis through the other co-creator of our program, Sarah, who is our PT. And I just found it to be the most fulfilling group of people to work with and such a fun way to build resiliency and change your mindset about a diagnosis. So I just really dove deep into osteoporosis, and then we partnered with Kari to bring it out to more people because it can only reach so many people in a small town like where we live. And then I am also BoneFit certified. I forgot to say that at the last Meet the Experts, so I'll say it here. But that's my big picture background.
Thanks so much. And I think you also have a really broad background in women's health and menopause and
That's
midlife
true.
health in general as well, which kind of contributes all around.
Yeah, thank God
Kenny.
Yenny's here to remember everything.
Yes, yeah. I know it's sometimes hard to like toot your own horn as well. So I'm here to help with that too. Kenny, do you want to go next?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so I'm Ken Rhodes, or Coach Ken. I'm a BoneFit certified personal trainer as well, and I work with Michaela in person with our in-person osteoporosis program. I've been leading cohorts with Kari for several years now, and I really enjoy getting to meet new people and seeing different backgrounds and where people come from and help you make progress on that 13-week journey. So I'm in the trenches responding, working with you day in and day out, making sure that you are comfortable with the movement patterns and making progress. And nothing makes me happier as a coach to see people progress and get stronger and feel like they're 10 years younger than when they started at the beginning of the program. So I'm here for that and look forward to meeting every one of you today.
Perfect. Thanks, Kenny. Karen, would you like to go next?
Sure thing. Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining us. I'm Karen, and I have a similar background to Michaela. I started out as a yoga teacher. I've always attracted a slightly older clientele, and as my clients were coming to me with their DEXA scans that showed that they had osteopenia or osteoporosis, I went and got my perinatal training certification and really dove into everything I could possibly learn about osteoporosis and how I could help them. And I'm a corrective exercise specialist. I am a continuing education, I can speak, provider. I've been doing this all day, continuing education provider. And I've been working with Kari for over a year, so I'm really happy to be here.
Thanks so much. And you're BoneFit certified too, as is
Thank
Kenny,
you.
which yeah. And then definitely last but absolutely not least, Elena.
Hi, everyone. I'm Elena, or Coach Elena. I am not BoneFit certified, just like everybody else is, but I am similar to Michaela, a yoga medicine therapeutic specialist at the 500-hour level. I've been teaching for over 10 years. I'm also a NASM certified personal trainer. I work a lot with all sorts of demographics, but I really enjoy working with people or people with ability specific needs, really working with different demographics to see how we can allow movement to feel really strong and really empowering. I think one of my favorite parts of being a coach is finding what works best for you and kind of navigating some of the challenges that can come with a diagnosis like osteoporosis or osteopenia, and the way that it can impact not just the way that we move, but the way that we feel about movement. And I think there's so much to be gained in the way that we talk about movement itself, but also the way we talk about mindset and our approach to it. So that's one of my favorite things about working here, working with Kari. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Elena. I'm so glad you brought up the mindset aspect of things as well and how we feel about movement. I'm sure that this will come up and we'll kind of get into it over the course of the session, but we know, because we hear this all the time from our incoming clients, that the diagnosis itself can be so fear-provoking, and often people, your medical providers might give you guidance that really revolves around minimizing risk of fracture. And often what that guidance looks like is for you to avoid movement, which there are certainly short-term benefits to that, but in the long run, that's really not a good solution in terms of maintaining your strength and your mobility. So our whole angle here is that we really want to teach you the safe ways to move that actually enable you to stay active and confident and competent in your daily lives, just with daily tasks of living, but also to build up that bone density and that strength so that we can increase your resilience and your capability to where we help you to get out of that state of fragility. And the mindset part of it is a huge variable in all of this, for sure. So I'm sure this will come up later. And just as a reminder, if you're just joining us, you are welcome to unmute yourself at any time to ask questions or to pop your questions into the chat. So we're here to answer all of that. But while we get the conversation going, what I wanted to start off with was a question that was left, or a comment rather, that was left on one of our social media videos that demonstrates some strength training movements that are research backed, to have been shown by research to improve bone density. And one of those movements was an overhead press, so pressing a dumbbell over into the overhead position. And the comment said, very bad for your rotator cuff. It was just that. It was very bad for your rotator cuff to do that movement. So I thought this would be a really good starting point for our discussion today, because I realized when I read that very short comment that there was a lot to unpack there. So Karen, I'm hoping that you can talk us through, just in kind of broad strokes, big picture terms, why in fact, in the vast majority of cases, exercise is not bad for us. You can talk maybe a little in more detail about the effect that exercise and healthy, productive stress and loading has on our bodies and our sort of injury potential. And then, since we're here to talk about bone density, maybe you can relate that specific movement, the overhead press, to why that is actually kind of an important thing to be able to do for your bone density as well.
Okay, let's get rolling. So for something like an overhead press, I can understand how that's concerning, especially as we age. A lot of people come into this with achy shoulders or knees or some other joint that's been bothering them, and then a certain movement just gets labeled as bad. However, there are no bad movements. There are just movements for which your body is not yet prepared. And our job is to help get your body prepared for those movements. So in the demo that Yanni was talking about, you may not be ready to take dumbbells and press them overhead, but you could probably start working in an overhead range of motion without any kind of weight at all, just to get your body prepared for doing that movement. And then we gradually would load over time. With something like an overhead press, That's actually a particularly important movement, especially for people who have osteoporosis, because that adds in a component of what we call axial loading. Axial loading is a compressive load that goes down along the central axis of the body, which is our spine. And it is movements like that that have actually been demonstrated to be most effective for helping to build bone mineral density in the lumbar spine. So we don't want to avoid those kind of movements. We just need to integrate them very, very slowly, mindfully, and with the individual in mind. And anything is open for us as far as possibility goes.
Yeah, so true. And when you think about this action of pressing, let's just say any kind of object that has weight to it into the overhead position, this is a movement that you're going to have to do in your daily life if you're like on the plane and putting the suitcase into the overhead bin, or even lifting a heavy pot onto the shelf in your kitchen. So it is not probably helpful to avoid that movement altogether, because when you then go to lift the suitcase or the pot, then you actually run the risk of overstepping your physical capacity, which is where injury can happen. So, Michaela, I'm wondering if maybe in a general sense, you can also talk about this notion of stressing our tissues and why that's actually a really positive thing in the context of exercise, and what the effect of this kind of very deliberate and methodical stressing of the tissues, like what it is that happens as a result of that stimulus.
Yeah, and I think that we always use the term stress, and sometimes that can be confusing because as a society, we think of stress as a bad thing. But in our case, in the context of movement, we're thinking stress as a stimulus, and it's actually a good thing when it's dosed appropriately for the individual. So that's always the context that we're using that word in. And what that good stress in the right amount for the individual does is it tells your body that you need to kind of build up and meet that stress. So it actually stimulates a change in your body to get stronger, whether that's stronger muscles or denser bones, just kind of depending on the tissue that you're thinking about in terms of the moment. And what that looks like as it translates into real life. So if you're training, you're building that resilience so that your real life is easier, because it's easy to pick up that pot and move it onto the stove, or it's easy to pick up that bag of dog food and dump it into the container. Whereas if you hadn't created that resilience to that load or that stress, you're picking up that bag of dog food and you're working at your max capacity. So we want to train in a way that allows us to move through our day where we're not constantly hitting our edge of ability, which is what places us at that risk of injury.
Yeah, that's really well explained. Thanks so much. And I think the kind of key takeaway to really highlight here is the fact that exercise makes us better able to tolerate the demands of our daily tasks and movements, not the other way around. So when you see somebody that is like consistently going to the gym and lifting weights, they are becoming stronger because their tissues and their bodies are adapting to the demands of that task. When you see somebody that isn't exercising at all, they are not as strong as the person that is applying that stress to their bodies. So there can often be this mindset that like, exercise is injurious, or like there's a wear and tear effect happening, when in reality, our bodies are incredibly adaptable. And when we challenge and we stress them, they respond by getting more tolerant to those stresses. They do that by becoming stronger, which is exactly what we're doing with strength training and bone density. We want our bones to be able to better resist compression, which is what's going to keep them from fracturing. And the way to do that is to stimulate them. You're kind of like inoculating them against compressive forces, and they become better able to deal with them. Patricia has a great question in the chat, which is going to get, by default, kicked back to Karen. She's asking if you can be successful in the program without using a weighted vest. She has severe scoliosis in addition to osteoporosis, and she's quite weak and worries about the weight vest hurting her.
Hi, Patricia. So it gets kicked back to me because I have severe scoliosis also. So I tend to field all of the scoliosis questions. And the short answer is yes, you can absolutely be successful in the program without using the weighted vest. And if that's your choice. So everybody has to be comfortable in the tools that we're using as we move through the program. We consider using a weight vest kind of a cherry on top, but not necessarily the meat and potatoes of the program. So really, as long as you're in the program and starting to slowly incorporate weight training and strengthening your back along the way, because inherently anytime you're dealing with osteoporosis, we're talking about back strengthening, we're talking about things that are going to help improve your posture, and all of those help with us with scoliosis also, because the stronger your back muscles are, the better they hold your spine in place and the less likely you are to see progression in your curve. So that's one of the ways that we would just work with you one-on-one. The other thing is the weight vests that we use are often adjustable. So if it's something that you're a little concerned about, you could get a nice light adjustable vest that you could slowly increase over time. We've had other people go through the program with scoliosis and they've had a lot of success with it. And I know that Michaela and Dr. Sarah have had people in person with scoliosis as well using the weight vest.
Yeah, perfect answer. So obviously everybody's unique and comes into their exercise routine with their like little quirks and unique variables about their bodies. So it is our job, and it is the job of any good trainer to accommodate and not just kind of manage, but actually productively work with those individual variabilities. And that includes things like having a slightly uniquely shaped spine compared to what would be considered the regular spine. So perfect answer, Karen. Thanks so much. Elena, maybe you can answer this one. Michelle is asking how much of the program is yoga, and I think that naturally leads into a little bit of a discussion about what yoga is good for and what it's helpful with in the context of osteoporosis.
Yeah. So, in terms of how much of the program is yoga, I would maybe think of it of how the yoga shows up within the program within the context of using it to support what it is that you're doing with weight training. So, you'll see it come up on recovery days or certain specific mobility days. But in terms of like how yoga is beneficial for osteoporosis, it's less about instigating that excuse me, I'm like very jet lagged, so I'm putting my words together. So it's less about improving bone density and more about, I mean, it can help peripherally, but it's really about providing the adequate mobility, recovery, stress reduction, improving balance, and all of those peripheral things that go into helping us either perform the weight training that is necessary for this program, but also just to help support the rest of what you're doing in your daily life. So I think of the yoga as being less like yoga for yoga's sake and more about how yoga can support some of these really specific elements of what it means to be strong and embodied in more ways than just one. So in terms of the second question of is this program appropriate, I think that can be a little bit specific. So it kind of just depends on the nature of what you feel is limiting. So that might be something that requires a little bit more of a specific one-on-one discussion. But
yeah, so what I would really ask there, so the next question is 45 minutes per session is more than I can do. Is this program appropriate for me? So I would, and maybe you want to respond in the chat, or you're welcome to unmute yourself as well, Michelle, but is it that you don't have 45 minutes of time, or do you perceive that there's something else that would make the 45 minutes not possible? So if you want to provide more context, we'll be able to answer that a little bit better. But that's a perfect response about the yoga. It really is there to kind of support your overall success within the program. And maybe Kenny, you can talk about this a little bit more, but the mobility aspect of it is quite important from both a posture standpoint, as well as the ability to safely and productively and efficiently execute a lot of the strength training movements. So maybe you can talk a little bit about that, like range of motion and how that comes into play.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. So, I mean, that is the nuts and bolts of strength training, right? Being able to be mobile and flexible and get into the proper positions and have a full range of motion. So I'm always a quality over quantity coach, and I'm sure everybody else will say the same thing. And ensuring that we are doing the exercises properly. I don't even like if it's an exercise that you're unfamiliar with and you've never done it before, and you use a 1 pound dumbbell to start out. I'm okay with that because I'd rather us move through a full range of motion, meaning as much range of motion as you can accomplish for that exercise, and then slowly over time, progressively load weight to that. So, we like to kind of meet you where you are when you come into the program, and we learn a lot about you through the intake process and making sure that these questions come up in the intake process, right, about scoliosis and about limitations physically, and we've worked with a wide variety of clients. So, it's definitely something that we've probably worked with before and have experience. And we can also modify exercises too, as well, to make them better suit you based on maybe your 45-minute limitation. I saw you respond in the chat. So, to tie this all together, range of motion and mobility work together hand in hand through the exercise and through the movement modalities that we do in the program. And if you can only work out for 30 minutes to start, that's great. And then we can slowly, progressively increase the amount of time that it takes you. And we can trim sets and we can trim reps and we can just make sure that you feel supported throughout the program as you get started. And just know that your stamina will get better and you will get stronger regardless of your age or condition.
That's great answer. And I would add to that too, that if you are unable to exercise for like X amount of time, whatever the arbitrary number might be, that I would view that as a real opportunity to improve your baseline from there, where you're going to gain so much in terms of your quality of life, your longevity, your independence, your fracture risk reduction, if you increase your physical capabilities to where a 45-minute workout is not becomes possible for you. And Michaela, maybe you can expand a little bit on this, but we really pride ourselves on being able to meet our clients where they're at. And we have some people in the program currently who, have very, very severe medical issues that they are dealing with. We're making it work for them to where they're getting the right types of support and the right types of loading to make their way through the program. So maybe you can expand on this a little bit if you'd like.
Yeah, and I'll just take 1 second too to just kind of answer the how much yoga question is there, which is like a hard answer for you. So we have 1 day of active yoga per week, and it's usually between 30 and 45 minutes, and they don't really go beyond 45 minutes. So I think that will fit your time limit pretty comfortably. And that kind of like active yoga is a fairly slow paced, steady practice. It's not like a very fast vinyasa. We're not asking you to do a lot of push-ups or chaturangas or anything like that. It's very approachable, and there's a lot of modifications within the teaching. So I do think that you'll be kind of pleasantly surprised at what you encounter with the yoga. And then we have some recovery yoga as well, which is more like a restorative yoga pose. So one very like supported, gentle shape that you hold for an extended period of time, and that's more nervous system support based. But then modifications. Whew, okay. Modifications. In terms of how we kind of meet each client where they're at, we are able to play with a lot of different variables. So when it comes to strength training, we have a few different variables we can play with, being the number of sets you're doing. So if you can only do 1 set of the exercise versus 2 or 3 sets of the exercises, we'll just meet you at 1 set until you feel capable of moving up to 2 sets. We can also do the same thing with reps. So if you can't quite do the quote prescribed number of reps, we're just going to play with that number for you. And then of course we can always play with the weight. So if it's too challenging with the weight at hand, then you can drop that weight down. You can even do the exercises body weight. So we have lots of different variables to play with to meet the individual. And then within that, we also have a huge library of exercises. So if there is something that is just simply not working with your body, then we can find an alternative for you and kind of sub that in. So we do have quite a few things to play with in terms of modifying for individual client basis. And we'll just kind of use our communication through the app that we use to deliver the program, and you get that one-on-one support with your coach, and then they're able to make those modifications for you.
Yeah, thanks so much for explaining all of that. And I think the main takeaway here is that we want to be strong and resilient and capable in our daily lives. So like wherever you're at, odds are we can like build from there, which is something that we successfully do with the vast majority of our clients. Most of them report feeling a lot more strong and capable and competent and having a lot less fear of movement and accidents and falls and fractures and things just in their daily lives within a few weeks of starting the program. So strength gains do come a lot more quickly than bone density gains. So that's something that you can really look forward to, is starting to feel those gains happening like much more quickly than the bone density ones, which are a little bit slower to come, as we know. Connie has a great question about working out at the Y on the eGym weight machine. So if she were to do this program, can she continue working out at the Y on the machines, or should I stop it when starting the program? This is a great question, and one that we field pretty often. The short answer is that the weight machines at the gym, the research does not support them as the most effective way to improve your bone density for a number of reasons, or indeed reduce your fracture risk. So we don't tell you not to do anything that you enjoy doing, but if your priority and your focus is really on improving your bone density and reducing your fracture risk, then what we give you is the actual evidence-based programming to do that, because we want to deliver something that is as safe and effective as possible. So Karen, maybe you can talk a little bit about the sort of difference between using free weights and the machines at the gym specifically as it relates to fracture risk and bone density.
Yeah, so one of the things I mentioned earlier was that axial loading, and that's something that we can't always get when we're using machines, because they're set for an average person of average height to go through an average range of motion, and they're really meant for kind of overall strengthening. They're not necessarily intended for specifically meeting the needs of someone with osteoporosis or osteopenia. In addition to that, when you're using a machine, you're usually kind of strapped in, you're anchored into a chair. And when you move a weight through that specified range of motion, your whole body doesn't have to adapt to moving that weight. Whereas when you're standing or even seated and using dumbbells, the whole rest of your body has to adapt to a changing center of gravity. And that's one of those things that actually helps to improve your balance over time. It helps to improve your proprioception, which is just your awareness of where you are in space. And that's one of those components that gives you the axial loading that we were discussing before. So it's really the act of holding weight in your hands, because that puts pressure down across your shoulder girdle and adds those nice compressive forces along the length of the spine.
Yeah, thanks so much. And I think one thing to kind of come back to here is that, you know, our entire goal is for nobody to have to waste time, money, effort doing something that is not research supported as an effective means of improving their bone density. And the machines are great, but they are mostly built for general fitness and muscle strength. So you're not going to be getting meaningful amounts of the stimulus that's needed to actually improve bone density. And we actually have a lot of people come to our program who have been very dedicated with their gym machine workouts, or even using a personal trainer with the intent of improving their bone density. And unless you have the specific exercise selection and those loading patterns and the progression, then it just isn't going to be giving you the results that you're after, unfortunately. Patricia has a great question about how does the program work? Is there a set time each day or week to get on Zoom or meet with the therapist? How do they know if you are doing it correctly? Elena, would you like to tackle this one?
Yes, absolutely. So over the 13 weeks, we'll meet kind of at the beginning of each phase. So there's 3 phases, one every month, and we'll meet at the very beginning. And of course, we'll have like our group kickoff call as well at the first week. So week 1, I think of in my brain as week 0. It's like our time to get together and really learn the ins and outs of the programs. And then the week after that, we start phase 1, which lasts a month or roughly 4 weeks. Then phase 2, which is another month, and then phase 3. So you'll meet with your coach a lot in the beginning, particularly within the first month. There's office hour meetings. Those are optional as well, like in addition to the meeting that kicks off that specific phase. So we try to give some independence. It can be hard when you're stuck to Zoom meetings all day. So even though we want to check in and make sure you're doing well, and it's always an opportunity to ask questions and get feedback, usually the way that you can interface with your coaches through CoachRx. So you can send videos or ask questions, send us messages, leave comments. There's lots of ways you can chat with us, and we're always there and happy to help. So if you have any specific questions about form or issues, uploading a video, sending it to us, and we can give you our feedback. And everybody's always very responsive. There's lots of different ways we can kind of communicate that information, whether it's sending videos back to you or texting or sending messages, so that you have all the information that you need. So it's kind of up to you, however much feedback you want. We're there to help. So you can say hi anytime.
Yeah, and your coach is there in private communication with you every day of the program. So you have the ability to leave questions or comments or feedback on every single exercise if you want to. And we do encourage you to make a note of your reps and your weights so that your coach is able to tell how you're progressing and then make informed recommendations on when you should increase your weights and your reps. There is also a broad prompt at the end of the workout asking you to rate how the exercise is felt, which again, when we have a sense of the level of challenge you're experiencing, how hard a specific movement is, how you're recovering, what your rate of perceived exertion is. All of these metrics then allow the coach to make more individualized coaching decisions and guidance for you specifically. And like Elena mentioned, there is a really seamless built-in video integration in the remote coaching platform. So it's very easy if you have, a question about a specific movement, just hit record yourself doing that movement, and your coach will tell you if they have any coaching cues. I think there's a lot of concern, and just to add, there's the Zoom meetings, but the workouts themselves you can do them at any time whenever they fit into your schedule, because it would be extremely complicated and very ineffective for us to require everybody to be on Zoom at the same time to do their workouts. So we want you to have the flexibility of doing those when they fit into your day. And we also are more than happy to help with time management in terms of slotting the workouts into your week whenever they fit into your schedule so that you can succeed in the program. Kenny, maybe you can talk a little bit about this question of how do I know if I'm doing it correctly, or how do the coaches know if they're doing it correctly? I think this is like less specific than people. There's obviously safety concerns and things that we want to be really, really specific with and mindful of. But on the whole, it's really about these main overarching safety points that we want to adhere to throughout the program. So maybe you can talk a little bit about some of these big picture safety cues about the hinge, the neutral spine, the core bracing, all of that, and how it's kind of almost more of a feeling than a specific thing. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. So I will start out by saying that Michaela and Dr. Sarah Avery have made specially curated videos to demonstrate all of these exercises that you will do in the 13 weeks. So every single day that you log in and do a workout, there will be supporting videos showing you and allowing you to mimic exactly what they're doing so that you can have an opportunity to safely do these exercises. So when you log into the programming app, right there is the exercises you're going to do and how to do them. So you simply follow along and watch the video, and there's layers to that, right? So if we don't have a mirror, we don't have access to being able to see ourselves move, it takes some time to get used to it, but that's why we have what Elena was talking about, the ability to film yourself and safely do the exercise and send it over to us. But like Annie said, a lot of the things we're trying to adhere to is a engaged core and a neutral spine. We generally give that cue of lengthening and broadening so that we aren't in that flex rounded position. We teach you how to properly pick things up off the ground and safely move your weight vest from one room to the other, and kind of all the keys you need to stay safe throughout the program. We have a very high efficiency without any injuries. So, we take it very seriously with a safety component. And again, it's there for you to ask as many questions as you can. So, during the office hours, we usually take the time to be in a open space and show you the movement patterns like that you have questions about, the hinge, the squat, the overhead press. So we really do thoroughly go over those movement patterns. You have access to the videos to watch every day, and you can always send your coach a video of yourself moving. Hopefully that answers it.
That definitely does answer it.
Good.
Those Zoom meetings are a great opportunity as well to, pop your head up and say like, hey, can you watch me do my squat and tell me if you would change anything? And the other thing that I'll add is that the sort of safety cues that span the entire length of the program and kind of apply across the board, these will be drilled into you until you are sick of hearing them. So there is virtually no chance that like something will slip by that is of like critical importance when it comes to safety. And I'm just going to pop a link into the chat right now that will take you to our Google reviews, which if you're sort of thinking or pondering this notion of like, how do I know if I'm doing it right? This is actually a sort of fairly solid answer to that question, because you'll see from the reviews that people, the experience that people have in our program is one of extremely interactive and supported coaching environment. It's one of the most consistently highly rated features of the program, the level of individualized guidance, the support, and the interaction. So there is no sense that you're kind of like left flailing in the dark and crossing your fingers and hoping for the best.
Can I
Yes,
jump
yeah.
in just on something? One other thing I wanted to highlight in terms of kind of learning the movements and making sure you're doing them safely. Elena mentioned that we have kind of the introduction meeting. So in that introduction meeting, we kind of give you all of the information you need to start the program, how to use the app, the weight vest information, everything like that. But that first week of the program is an introduction week. And so that week we are taking you through kind of the main movement principles unloaded, and we ask you to send in videos so that we can check your form before you even start loading it and make sure that the main movements that you're going to see repeated in variation throughout the program look good before you even start kind of jumping in and adding weight. So we have a week at the very start of the program to check your form, check your safety, and then we start loading you.
That's a really great thing to add. Thanks for thinking of that. Jody is saying that she currently practices the Fishman yoga program for osteoporosis. Are we familiar with this type of yoga, and how can I incorporate this into your program? Great question. This is a whole can of worms that we're about to open here. Karen, passing this one over to you.
Sure. So yes, we are very, very familiar with the Fishman protocol for osteoporosis. And it is actually part of what you will learn in doing the yoga practices with us. However, we make it very clear what the intention behind sharing those yoga practices with you is, and it is not for bone building. So there has been done a whole bunch of research on things like yoga and Pilates for osteoporosis, and they really just don't have enough loading to move the needle, because as you know, as we've been talking about things like axial loading, and Michaela got a little bit into this idea of stressing our tissues. In addition to that, we need to see some kind of progression over time. That progression can happen very slowly. It can happen in the form of doing more repetitions or more sets or lifting a little bit more weight. But without that component, we don't see the bone building effects that we're looking for. And yoga inherently doesn't have that because you're only moving around your own body weight. It's the same reason why walking really is not going to move the needle on bone density either. Anything that's a body weight practice, and that actually includes walking with a weight vest as well, because that is so close to your own body weight, and there tends to be no progression there as well. The weight vest tends to stay the same weight anytime someone is walking with it. And your body is always looking for new information, new stimulus, new and novel movement. And that's just one of those things that's missing in that particular program. But yoga does have a whole bunch of benefits, and that's part of why we have it in our program, because it does help with balance. It helps just with your own mental state and your sense of calm in your body, and having a better internal environment is a better place to promote bone growth to begin with. So yes, very familiar, and you'll see lots of yoga. Most of the people love the parts that's part of our program.
There's definitely, thank you. That was such a thorough answer. Yeah, there's definitely pros and cons to yoga. And I think one of our big goals as well is to provide education and, again, evidence-based information on like efficacy and safety, how well researched something is, and what the research says about these different modalities. Because what that then does is empower you to make informed decisions about how you spend your time, your money, and your effort when it comes to choosing your bone density and bone health and fracture risk reduction protocol. The the yoga does certainly have huge benefits when it comes to fracture risk reduction overall for all the reasons that Karen mentioned, but it is not an effective bone density intervention. And this we do know from the research. The results of that study have not been replicated, which is usually like it's a major prerequisite for something being implemented into clinical practice, which is why yoga has not really been implemented in that way. And actually, this brings me back to one of the social media comments that we got recently. Somebody was saying that they had been diagnosed with osteopenia, but very close to osteoporosis. They've been walking on average of 2 to 3 miles 5 days a week for 2 years, but their score still got worse. She also practices yoga for several hours a week, and has been getting on some of the medication. And she sort of concluded by saying that walking has been great for their mental and emotional health and overall fitness, but not bone health. And that is exactly what we're talking about. So, you know, it's so sad and such a missed opportunity when somebody spends 2 years doing something that we know from the research is not going to have the effect that you want it to have. So, there's so much value in, you know, even if you're using just like an AI tool to give you an overview of what the research says, like what the salient takeaways are, and that's even if you don't want to read the whole study, which can be like super overwhelming, but you can still get a good sense of like, okay, this is where we're at with like this particular movement modality. Let me see what else. Yeah, just as a reminder, so many good questions in the chat so far. Feel free to continue dropping your comments and your questions in there. I was hoping that we could talk a little bit about impact training as well. This was another comment on one of, I think, Michaela's videos that showed some impact exercises and some axially loaded strength training exercises. And the comment was, if you already have osteoporosis in the spine, you shouldn't do any jumps or heavy weightlifting. So maybe you can unpack that a little bit for us.
Yes, I'm assuming because
Yes,
I'm
yeah.
first. Okay. Yeah, so when it comes to osteoporosis, bone building, what actually works to improve bone building, it is that external load. So Karen already kind of covered this really well, but it is that external load that progresses over time. And that external load can come from the weights that you are holding, but it can also come from the ground force reaction of your body hitting the floor. So I like to think about this as kind of top down or bottom up. So when you're using weights, you're axially loading, you're compressing the spine in a healthy way to create that stimulus to improve the bone density. And then when you use impact exercises, you're creating that kind of similar force, but this time it's from your heels or your feet meeting the ground, and you can almost feel that vibration moving up through your body. And that's that ground force reaction, creating that same kind of healthy compression, but instead of top down, it's coming bottom up. So we do like to really use that impact training, and it appears from the research that that impact training is particularly helpful for building bone around the hip and the femur. So we love impact training, but we introduce it really gradually because we know that we have people coming into the program with all different levels of osteoporosis, all different backgrounds and movement. And this is something we like to just build in a really gradual way so that your tissues, your bone, your connective tissues can all get used to that impact before we progress it into bigger things. So what that looks like is doing heel drops. So we rise onto the balls of the feet and we let the heels drop down. Even that simple movement can be progressed in like 10 different ways. So how high you're lifting your heels off the ground, how much are you letting your heels kind of drop so you can control it more or less to get more or less impact. Are you wearing sneakers? Are you going barefoot? Are you on a really cushy surface, or are you on just a nice thin yoga mat? So there's a lot of different variables that you can play with even within that one exercise. And then as you begin to tolerate that well, that's when we move into something like stomping or jumping. And even jumping, you can kind of play with, again, sneakers, the surface underneath you. How high are you jumping? How hard are you landing? So we use impact, but we use it in a really mindful way and we progress it gradually.
Yeah, perfect answer. Thank you so much. Yvette has a great question about the structure of the program. So how many workouts per week? There's 4 strength training workouts per week. And then there's that yoga day that Michaela mentioned, which is about 30 to 45 minutes. And then there's a recovery day, which we include as kind of like a menu of options. So on those days, you can pick anything from like light stretching and mobility routine to some self-myofascial release or some sort of nervous system downregulation, like a guided relaxation or breathing exercise. So those recovery days can be anywhere from about 10 to 30 minutes, depending on which item you choose and how many of them you want to do. And for the strength workouts, we typically, this is usually the follow-on question, is how long do they take? So in the first phase, we recommend setting aside about an hour for each of the strength workouts. And that's because in those early phases, you are getting used to the movements, you're learning them from scratch. You're learning all of the performance cues and the safety cues to go with each movement. You're learning and getting familiar with the structure and the flow of the workouts, and you're maybe kind of feeling your way around the platform as well, getting used to the video format, the demonstrated and narrated videos that you're following along with, and the written instructions for the workouts, as well as logging your weights and your reps and giving your coach feedback. So that time commitment does decrease significantly once you have all of those things on deck and it's kind of like flowing and grooving really smoothly. And by that point, when we introduce new movements, there are things that build on things that you have already done and are familiar with. So that feeling of learning things from scratch really goes away and reduces drastically in phases 2 and 3. Hopefully that answers the question. And in terms of needing a DEXA scan before you start this program, you have the option to provide us with your DEXA scan if you want to, but it's absolutely not a prerequisite. So we do have people that come to us wanting to preventatively start to do this kind of work, knowing that they have a family history or other variables that maybe predispose them to low bone density. So it's not a prerequisite. And yes, I remember we were emailing about hip replacements. Who here has a client in a current cohort or has had one recently with a hip replacement? Michaela, yes.
We have one in Caitlin's cohort right now. Yeah, so with hip replacement, you might get some guidance from your doctor. So for example, the woman we have in our program right now, she's had some guidance about movements that are restricted. So we're making a few small modifications for her in the yoga portion of the program, but it's really just one pose that she can't do right now. And that will likely change as she gets further out from her hip replacement. But the biggest thing that you kind of want to think about in terms of kind of coming into exercise after a hip replacement is just really honoring your range of motion. So you might have some kind of like preset limitations on your range of motion because of the new parts. So with that, you might need to just kind of pull back on that range of motion and be mindful about not pushing it. And then, of course, we're going to just support you to make sure that you've got a form that looks good, you're not having any pain or discomfort. And if we need to make any modifications, that's again when that conversation with your coach comes in. And like I said, we're having that conversation right now with a current client, and we're navigating that pretty easily. So we're always able to do that with our library of alternative movements and with your coach communication.
Yeah, perfect answer. And I think maybe we were, I included this in my email response to you about this too, but a surgery of any kind is like a traumatic and disruptive event for the integrity of the tissues that move and support and stabilize the joint. So rebuilding tissue resilience and strength and that like well-rounded muscular support for any joint that has had a surgery or a replacement is going to be hugely beneficial in the long run for your overall function and how you feel, as well as like keeping that new replaced joint really nice and stable as well. And in general, with strength training for osteoporosis, we want to be moving in ways that are very kind of controlled and deliberate. We are not pushing range of motion for obvious reasons because of the bone density side of things either. So people that come into our program with joint replacements, it can seem like that would be an additional cause for alarm, but actually it does not make you an outlier in most ways in terms of how we coach the movements and how the program. Hopefully that is helpful. Feel free to ask if you have any other questions about that. Patricia, so we don't require doctor's permission to participate in the program. You'll see that when you make your way through our intake form, we will ask you if you are medically cleared to exercise. And all that means is that your physician has not told you that you shouldn't exercise. And if you're at all unsure, then you can ask them if it's safe for you to undertake a fully supervised and coached progressive strength training program specifically for osteoporosis. And we do have resources on our website that you can download and print out to give to your doctor if they want to find out more about the program. And really the main things that we're screening for in that intake flow are like the major red flags. So somebody having a fracture that is very recent and potentially hasn't fully healed yet, or having very, very severe levels of pain, or levels of pain that are chronic and ongoing, because that is not a baseline onto which we can effectively layer the challenge or that healthy stress of an exercise routine. So if you don't have an unhealed fracture and you're not experiencing severe chronic pain, odds are any other aches and pains or little quirks that you might have, we are very equipped to deal with. Okay, who wants to tackle this one? Does a stair climber help with bone density? I see Karen smiling broadly. Why don't you go ahead?
Yeah, so everything that we do in our program is evidence-based, and to the extent that we're even updating things as new research comes out. And the two things that have consistently been shown to be effective for building bone are strength training with progressive overload and impact training. That's it. Other forms of exercise are great. They help to slow the rate of bone loss, but that is not the same as the modalities that we know are going to build bone. So I think that kind of covers, treadmills, stair climbers, yoga, Pilates, walking with a weighted vest.
Water aerobic.
Swimming.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Water aerobic, swimming.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, that was actually a really good sort of blanket answer. Another comment that we got that kind of ties into this on one of our social media videos was, you can't reverse osteoporosis. And this is sort of debatable. And, we have clients that have, in fact, gone from osteoporosis to osteopenia, which is very much the reversal of the trend of losing bone density. Michaela, maybe you can talk a little bit about the sort of physiological process of like bone resorption versus bone building that's happening. Like what is happening at the cellular level when we see changes in bone density in either direction?
Sure. So there's two main cells that we're going to talk about for this. That's osteoblasts. Osteoblasts build bone. So blast, blast build. Osteoclasts are the bone resorption cells. So they're the ones that kind of take away old dead bone cell and get rid of it for you. And so they serve a really important purpose, but we want to make sure that those two cells are fairly evenly paced and maybe even higher on the bone building, the osteoblast cells. So what happens with osteoporosis is that we have an imbalance in those two cells' activity, and the osteoclast cell activity is happening faster than the osteoblast cell activity. When we add in strength training with progressive overload and impact training, that stimulates the osteoblasts to lay down more bone tissue. And you can think about it as you're kind of adding that stress to the bone, and your bone is responding by saying like, well, geez, I need to get stronger or else I'm going to have a lot of trouble if she keeps doing this to me. So you can think about that stimulus as a reminder to your bones that they need to kind of meet that demand. And so the goal of strength training and impact training for osteoporosis is to start to bring those two cells at least to even, and ideally try to bring osteoblast activity higher than osteoclast activity. And then again, we do that with a gradual progressive stimulation of the bones to lay down that new tissue, to stimulate those cells to do that job.
Yeah, I think understanding the relationship between those two cell types is really kind of key and then informs the decisions that you make as far as the way that you're moving your body and loading your bones, because then you understand what the inputs are and what the mechanical inputs are and what the sort of physiological response is. And I think another useful thing to point out is that sometimes people will go to their next DEXA scan and the number will be the same as what they had in their baseline scan, and this can feel disappointing, like nothing happened, when in reality the natural history of osteoporosis is that people are going to be losing about 2% of their bone density a year. So if you prevented those 2% from being lost and stayed at the same level, then that is a win. That is clinically significant, and it translates to reduced fracture risk. And if you're doing a movement-based resistance training program, you'll have targeted these other fracture risk variables as well, like your balance and your posture and your stress levels, your muscular strength, which supports your endocrine, your cognitive and your immune health. All of these crazy benefits that kind of, it checks all of the boxes in terms of the functional benefits that you're getting. So it's really, really powerful. And the number is, the bone density is just one of the factors when it comes to your fracture risk. So you really want to make sure you're taking this well-rounded, holistic approach that is coming at it from all different angles. And hopefully that provides a little bit more context for Michaela's excellent answer as well. Okay, so does this program have a nutrition component? So we actually do have a nutrition component in the works. Currently, the program includes general information about nutrition for good bone density. Because we can't offer individualized guidance without having an established sort of provider-client relationship, which would include like testing so that you could receive information and support that is actually in line with your nutritional profile. That's not something that we can offer within the confines of this program. But that is, we do have a program that is designed to go kind of in tandem with the exercise component that's in development right now. But Michaela is a nutritional therapy practitioner, and she will happily work with you if nutrition is something that you want to tackle as part of your diagnosis and your bone health regimen.
And I'll just say too that we do get that question, we do get like nutrition questions somewhat often. And like Yenny said, we can't give individualized guidance, but if you have questions about like generally what should you eat before and after a workout, anything like that, that's kind of like broad strokes nutritional support for strength training, we are able to support in that way. That's a good place for office hours. You can kind of ask those broad strokes questions.
Yeah, and I think even basic things like tracking your protein intake and all of that kind of stuff can be really revelatory, just in terms of getting the basic building blocks of your macronutrients right will make a big difference in terms of your success with strength training. Feeling more recovered and appropriately fueled for exercise as well. So we've got just a couple more minutes to answer questions. Whatever burning questions remain or brainwaves flowing through your minds right now, feel free to drop them into the chat. I will add at this point that our next cohort is starting on November 10th. So that is a week from today. It's being coached by Elena, who you've heard from today. And like we mentioned, that first week of the program is introductory. So you're getting light video programming that covers the kind of big picture principles of successfully strength training for bone density, familiarizes you with the big movement groups and the safety cues that go with those. So there was a lot of time in that intro week for you to kind of get situated, learn everything about the platform, connect with your coach, receive guidance about your weight choices if you want to order them. So that intro week is designed to be a little bit of a time buffer in which you can get set up and then comfortably and confidently start the program the following week. Patricia, so the cost of the program in 2026 is going to go up to $1,095 or 3 monthly payments of $400. I did want to add, you're mentioning about the holiday period. So any of our cohorts that spans a holiday period includes extended access for that exact reason. So there is extra time. So in essence, your 13-week program will take about 15 weeks to deliver, because we do not assume that you are skipping the holidays or opting to not host family or travel during that time frame. So you do have the extra time there. And we're always very happy on a one-on-one basis to work with you if something comes up, you need a little bit of an extension or just some extra time beyond the official end of the program date rather. So we know that life happens and sometimes you need to kind of adapt on the fly. We're more than happy to work with you when these kinds of things occur. I'm so glad this was helpful. The cost right now is $9.95 if you pay upfront, or 3 monthly payments of $350. Additionally, if you want to snag the lower price and use your registration in 2026, we're happy to do that as well. Just send us an email. I'll put our support email here in the chat. So just send us an email if you have any questions about that at all. Does somebody want to tackle this question about whether jumping rope is effective?
I'll jump in.
Yeah.
So jumping rope is a great impact exercise. I personally don't use it with osteoporosis because I just fear the tripping hazard. So to me, the fall risk is a little bit higher than the benefit of the exercise. However, we do something called pogo hops, which is essentially like jumping rope without the jump rope. So you still get that same kind of input, that impact, but you don't have the risk of getting tangled up in something. So we're always thinking about risk versus reward, and getting tangled up in a jump rope is very, very high risk, low reward.
There's no need for that. Or that thing where like it whips the underside of your arm.
Yeah.
No need for that either. Great question about the coach assignments, Patricia. So we schedule our program start dates and coach assignments about 6 months ahead of time. So it just depends. We want our coaches to be able to manage their workload effectively and not have too many overlapping cohorts at the same time. So we kind of just schedule it based on their availability and how things fit into the schedule in general. So the November cohort, like I said, is being instructed by Elena, and then the one starting in December, on December 10th, is being instructed by Karen. There was something else that I was going to mention that just totally flew out of my head. Oh, yes, we're going to send out a recording of this session via our newsletter. So you can always review anything that you wanted to kind of touch base on. The other thing that I wanted to add is that you can hit reply on any communication that you receive from us if you have a question or you just want more context or to chat with a member of our team. So we're always happy to answer via email, hop on a Zoom call with you so that we can answer your questions as they relate to your specific needs and the program. So you are welcome to reach out to us anytime. We're usually extremely prompt with responding. So just let us know what questions remain, how we can better assist and support you in your bone density journey. And we really hope to see you, some of you, in our cohort starting next week or a month later in that December cohort. I want to thank the coaches for being here. Karen, Elena, Michaela, Kenny, thank you all so much for hopping in and sharing your insights and your expertise. I'm so happy to have had you all here. And thanks to all of you for taking time out of your day to come and hang out with us and connect with us. We really, really enjoy meeting all of you and talking to you as well. So appreciate all of you. Thanks for being here, and be in touch. We hope to see you in one of our groups soon. Have a great night, everybody.